avec l'écho, on a l'impression d'être un ange. So yes, allow me to thank the Law Society of Upper Canada for honoring me with this reception, and tomorrow with the honorary doctorate which you will confer upon me. And words cannot begin to express how touched I am really by your gesture, and how empowered you make me feel. Really. And we all need that. The more empowered you are, the more you can take actions as a change maker. The more you can encourage and enable others to be the change they want to see. And your very words of validation of my lifelong commitment to the principles of social justice, fairness, and inclusion in Canada and other parts of the world is also encouraging. Your words are also encouraging. And having had the great fortune over the course of my mandate as 27th Governor General and Commander-in-Chief of meeting and working with thousands of my fellow Canadian citizens, women, men, and youth of great courage, of generosity and creativity in every corner of our vast country, I know really how vibrant our social fabric is. And I know how privileged we are as Canadians. How privileged we are indeed to live in an affluent society whose very legal architecture elevates the principles of fundamental justice above all others. And we can see that in Canada, equality, fairness, and liberty act as overarching values guiding the administration of justice, the practice of good governance, and the regulation of the labor market. And those are cherished values which are embodied in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, anchor our way of life, notre vivre ensemble, comme nous disons en français, as we say in French, in a way that allows people hailing from all corners of the globe to live side by side in relative harmony. And this is very important, for we are living in a time in which increasing economic turmoil is going hand in hand in so many parts of the world with some of the harshest forms of ethno-nationalism we have witnessed in decades. The Front National in France, the Golden Dawn in Greece, the Magyar Guard in Hungary. These are but a few examples of the ways in which the bonds of solidarity and reciprocity can fray under the pressure of a global financial crisis, and we know that. That's why we should find great comfort in the fact that Canada has escaped, for the most part, the pangs of xenophobia. As heads of state, global business leaders, and leaders of international civil society told me during my 40 state visits and official visits throughout Europe, Latin America, Africa, China, and Afghanistan, Canada is truly a model society which many seek to emulate. And we have our progressive legal and judicial system to thank for many of our achievements. Yet we should not allow ourselves to be lulled into complacency by our international reputation. Nor should we forego vigilance, for we know that it is becoming harder for immigrants and refugees to find their footing in our society. We know that. We know that it is becoming more difficult for our youth to become gainfully employed. And we know that the gap between the rich and the poor is getting wider every day. As intimated in last month's University of British Columbia report entitled Canadian Inequality, Recent Development and Policy Options, our ability to honor our commitment to the principles of social justice is diminishing. For you do not have to walk too far to discover that pockets of misery, of despair and abject poverty abound. You do not have to travel too far to discover that entire communities in Canada lack access to safe drinking water, heating, basic foodstuffs, adequate housing, and basic education. It's a reality in our country. You do not have to look too far to realize that incarceration in Canada has an economic disadvantage, an age, a color, and a mental health issue. And you know perhaps more than others how much access to justice is increasingly becoming the preserve of a privileged few. To quote Chief Justice Beverly McLaughlin, who said and asked, "Do we have adequate access to justice?" I think the answer is no. Among those hardest hit are the middle class and the poor. We have wonderful justice for corporations and for the wealthy, but the middle class and the poor may not be able, in many situations we have found, to access our justice system. Public confidence in the system of justice is essential. How can there be confidence in a system that shuts people out, that does not give them access? And I could not agree more with her. Because, dear friends, there are conditions in Canada that should make everyone in this room bristle. For nothing is more disgraceful than the marginalization of women, men, children, and youth who are driven to isolation and despair, or worse yet, to a life of crime, imprisonment, or even suicide. So we cannot tolerate such disparities and negative outcomes. Instead, I believe that we must pool our strengths and our ideas to stem the tide of inequality by ensuring that everyone everywhere can fulfill his or her highest potential. And that is one of the reasons why my husband Jean-Daniel Lafont and I have invested so much time and energy in founding and directing the Michaëlle Jean Foundation. As the legacy of my time in office, the foundation was born of a vision shared by grassroots organizations, business leaders, artists, lawyers, elected officials, and young people from across Canada. And they called for the creation of a national organization that would convene all sectors of society around a pan-Canadian campaign empowering marginalized youth to overcome the many barriers they confront in their communities. And what distinguishes the Michaëlle Jean Foundation from others with a similar focus is that our weapon of choice is the arts and culture. And to use the expression of my husband, Jean-Daniel, we believe that the arts are weapons of mass construction. Les arts sont en effet des armes de construction massive. The arts are weapons of mass construction. And why? Because we have seen the ways in which the arts bring healing to young people trying to overcome addictions. We have witnessed how the arts bring hope and self-confidence to young people who have been abused. We have seen how the arts can rehabilitate young people who have gotten in trouble with the law. And we have witnessed how the arts can enable marginalized youth to develop strategies to fight injustice at home and abroad, and in so doing, to reinforce their sense of belonging and their responsibilities as full citizens. And ultimately, as so many young people have told us, the arts save lives. Par les arts, on sauve des vies. And that's why our motto, Arts for Action, Arts for Change, is so potent. For it speaks to our commitment to equipping underprivileged youth with the creative tools to transform their communities, and through the sum of their actions, I would say, transform our entire society. So let me give you an example. D.B. Young, she's a young poet from an underserved neighborhood in Toronto.